People can save planets or wreck them. That's the choice. Be the best of humanity. Or pull to open.
Pull to open?
Yes, and what do you do? Usually nothing. I say usually.
And I'm going to sit over there for 3 hours, then...
Relax.
Here! Come!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire television program, in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
I'm Chris Taylor, and we are a couple of time travelers masquerading as human with just one heart. But here we are in the heart of Doctor Who, in the heart of the Codex, our list of Doctor Who stories, and we are going through them with the help of the randomizer, which is a good thing because we would never have picked the place that we've gone to this week with the randomizer's help. Pete, give us a previously on.
Yeah. Previously on Pull to Open. Wow. I guess I should have picked that up at the mid-sentence, but no. We've been to a lot of places, guys. And recently, many doctors. So we were at 3 episodes ago on dinosaurs on a spaceship. Lots of dinosaurs on spaceships. Well, one. And it was a Matt Smith gang episode, one of the first gang episodes. Gangs come to be part of that era and perhaps even the era after. But we didn't spend too much time in that spaceship. We were rocketed back into the classic series, the Jon Pertwee era. His first season with the Master, and it was the second story there in The Mind of Evil, which I had never seen in color.
Yeah, me neither. And it was back when the Doctor had a fam he liked to call Unit.
Unit, multitasking in that episode, shall we say. Doing it masterfully, if I may. Also.
That's right. Doing it live.
But then we jump forward just a little bit to the Tom Baker era and to a very meaningful episode for one Chris Taylor, I understand.
That's right.
It was Destiny of the Daleks.
Yeah, go listen to that episode, folks, because I have much more to say about that. Destiny of the Daleks, very, very important episode for you. Also set in a quarry, however, and that meant that at the end of last week's Pull to Open, Pete asked the randomizer for another quarry episode, and Pete, where did it take us?
It answered me. It has been answering me a lot lately. It's been pretty direct. It took us to Series 12, Episode 3, Orphan 55.
I think it's sort of answering us alternately, basically, because for me, I asked for more Tom Baker. It took us to Destiny of the Daleks. You asked for a quarry. It took you to Orphan 55. So now, I've got to be really careful about what I asked for this week.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, is this the randomizer actually getting better at hearing us, or are we more in tune with the randomizer and now can kind of get a little bit ahead of what it might actually serve us? I don't know. Perhaps we're both.
I don't know. I have a number of reasons why the randomizer took us here, but we will get there.
Yeah,
we will get there. But it is. I guess it's kind of nice to be sort of doing this. Talking about Whittaker at kind of an episode at a time every so often. We were last in the Whittaker era for Revolution of the Daleks. We had some things to say there about the end of the fam. We've had things to say about the Witchfinders and Rosa. And it's been an interesting way because we know that with the Whittaker era, we all need to just take a breath and sit down and rewatch this stuff and see if it gets better on a second viewing. And I'm not going to spoil you as to what happened on this second viewing. But suffice to say that my judgment of this particular episode has not changed.
It's funny, the randomizer avoided the Whittaker era for the longest time. Like, we started out when the podcast was not yet random. Series 12, it's funny. Series 12 was just being broadcast.
Yes.
And this is not one of the episodes we talked about, because we were talking about fairly current episodes.
We were talking about Spyfall, but I will say, just to correct you there, Pete, because Pull to Open is all about being corrected when we're wrong. I did say one thing about Orphan 55 that I think is the reason the randomizer brought us here. I said that in the future, when Doctor Who is written entirely by AI, this is the kind of thing we're going to get when AI has been trained on Doctor Who. Orphan 55 is kind of going to be the result. It feels like that sort of AI written script thing. Now, at the time,
that's masterful commentary. I'm just because I want to say podcast over right now because it's like it actually really sums it up really well. But anyway,
at the time the AI chatbots that we're now currently dealing with, right. ChatGPT, Bing and Bard and all of that stuff that is really heating up Silicon Valley right now. We weren't looking at that then. We were just looking at people would train large language models to basically auto predict words so they could write scripts. And it would just be this hilarious thing. You'd see it on Twitter. Someone would write an AI driven episode of Seinfeld, right? So that's what I had in mind then. The randomizer has taken us here to reconsider that opinion right at the height of the new AI chatbot craze. So I think you're at fault for asking for a query. I think I'm at fault for describing this as a story written by AI. I think the randomizer is like, oh, you like AI. You've been writing lots of stories about it in your journalism career. Let's go to that episode you mentioned. Maybe the randomizer is more than a little AI focused itself.
Oh, wow. I love it. Conflagration of things coming together here for us to revise our thinking on Orphan 55, perhaps.
Or not.
But before we do that, we are going to jump into what we like to call the Pull to Open feedback loop, where we talk about all the commentary about the podcast and have a little bit of a conversation, so to speak, with you guys, the fans. So for starters, if you want to, go check out the show notes and you can start playing Pull to Open Bingo. There's a bingo card that we link to in every episode that one of our loyal followers, Joe, who goes by the Josen One on Twitter, developed for us. And it's got all of our ratings. So if you, well, actually, it doesn't have all of our ratings because we have a new rating system. So
it has 4 out of our 5 ratings.
Yeah, 4 of our 5 ratings. There are, you can stamp off things for when we say something blatantly wrong without correction, but I've been corrected on that one. So whatever I said about us not talking about it has already been corrected. But something will probably come up in the next hour or so, guys. So
guaranteed.
But check out the bingo card. It's super fun to check out. And while you're doing that, why not pause the playback of the podcast so you can put all of your attention on reviewing the podcast, because guys, we love reviews, and reviews are a great way to show your support for the podcast, particularly if you are listening on Apple or listening on an iPhone. Even if you don't listen on Apple, check out the Apple Podcast app. They allow reviews. You can go in there, leave a 1-word review, a 2-word review, a 500-word review. It really doesn't matter, but whatever you leave, we would just love it if you would do that, and possibly even leave a star rating. Maybe I'm thinking about 5 stars for some reason. 5 stars are the right amount of stars. It just feels good to me.
Indeed, and while you're thinking of stars, also think of emoji Doctor Who titles, which is something that we regularly have on the show. Listeners try to stump me effectively through Pete reading me the emoji title, describing the emoji to me. And I was completely stumped last week.
We
both were. By the number 42, a couple of characters bowing and a shuffle icon in between them. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, you were right. And I had to go right to the source on this one. So I actually went right back to the person who left the emoji titles and actually sent them on Twitter. Also a thing you can do at Pull2Open63 on Twitter.
Nice.
And it was Bob Gilby. Mm-hmm. And he gave me the answer key. And we were right. I guessed it during our guesses. I wasn't confident in the guess, but it's 4 to Doomsday. How is that 4 to Doomsday? How is the 4 to blonde woman, shuffle, blonde woman bowing, shuffle, and then brunette guy bowing? How does that 4 to Doomsday? So the 4 to Doomsday, so 4-2. So you got that. Mm-hmm, that's easy. Mm-hmm, but why is the other 3 Doomsday? Well, this is basically, in his mind, this is Rose and the Doctor separated by a wall.
Okay.
And that's like the shuffle thing is kind of like switched
Doomsday.
universes. And it's not bowing, they're like up against the walls on each side of the prime universe in each world.
I like that. That is deep. That is many layers of Doctor Who nerdery deep. Because
he's inadvertently given us Doomsday.
Yes.
That's the Codex too.
I
By
love
the way,
it.
every one of these emoji titles goes into our Codex, guys. So watch for them there.
Yeah, that is very clever. Okay, I like it. Like, well done, Bob. Congratulations. You two can stump me. And do we have any emoji titles this week?
We do. In fact, we have some more from Bob. He gave us a lot.
Okay, Bob.
We'll close them out this week. So, are you ready, sir?
Yes.
3 emoji titles. First one. It's a lot of emojis. I can't even count. There's so many I can barely count them. But a lot of them are the same emoji, so I'm just going to... it should be easy to get through. So, first emoji. Hospital.
Okay.
Second emoji. Crescent moon.
Okay.
And the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th goes to about the 20th emoji. There's basically another 15 to 20 emojis. And they are all the city skyline. A city skyline.
Hospital, city. The moon is confusing me slightly, but it's making me think that it's not set on Earth. So maybe it's set on New Earth. And maybe it is Gridlock. Is it Gridlock?
You actually said it already. It's New Earth.
It's New Earth. Okay. All right. I was going further.
The moon threw me a little bit, but I think there might be something in. I haven't seen New Earth in forever. Maybe they refer to the moon a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's New Earth because of the hospital. Remember, there was like the hospital was in the. That's where they went. That was
right.
They went with the cat nurses and stuff like that.
Wasn't there also a hospital in Gridlock though? Isn't the face of Bow in that? In the hospital.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. So
it was the city thing that's making me think like we're clearly in the city, right? You know, and
the utter urbanization of everything.
Yeah, maybe with the you'd need like a singing emoji in the middle of that, or cat singing him.
Oh yeah, maybe if there was a cat in this one. Well, actually, there's cats in Gridlock too, though.
Right. So. Well, okay. Well, we got the location.
Okay.
We got the story series. Okay. All right.
Second one. You ready?
You ready?
Okay. First emoji. 2 loops of rope in a knot, basically sort of being wrapped around each other.
Yep.
Then there is a landscape emoji with a mountain, trees, some water. And the third emoji is a musical note.
Gotta be River Song. It's gotta be the husbands of River Song. If it's the knot, right? They're tying the knot.
Tying the knot is also a
the wedding of River Song. It could be either. Yes, it was going to be wedding or husbands.
I suppose it could be. I think tying the knot is pretty clearly like it's a wedding, you know. So
I like that with both of these, I've kind of glanced off the actual answer into an adjacent story.
Like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target.
But I do hit the target. I glance off into a sequel. That's where my brain goes.
All right. We'll say those are both successes.
Okay, thank you.
We're making up for the Port of Doomsday. Okay, so next one. This one's real quick. 2 emojis. So the first one is mute. So there's a speaker with sort of a line through it.
Yes.
And the second one is books. The 3 books stacked.
The 3 books. So it's a stack of books. So it's a library. So it's got to be Silence in the Library.
There it is.
Hey.
Got it. First try. Oh, thanks for playing, Chris. You get a nice copy of our home game along with whatever else all the no prizes you've won. Great job. You. 3 for 3, sort of.
I feel like getting the sequels on the foot, that should be like extra credit.
Ah, All right, sure. I was going to dock you a point for not settling on the actual ones.
You say dock me a point, I say add 2 points. I say my score is 5 out of 3.
All right. Well, folks, these emoji reviews that we're trying to stump Chris with could be yours. If all you have to do is leave them in a review or a tweet or a TikTok comment or wherever else you find Pull to Open. And again, they go right to the Codex. The Codex, of course, is our spreadsheet full of every single televised episode of Doctor Who in sequential order.
Weird.
And these all go there, and you'll get credit for it as well. Moving on in the feedback loop. If you're listening to us on Spotify, hey, I know you're like, I wish I could just review. I'm probably on an Android phone. I wish I could review you in the Apple podcast app. I don't really have it. You know what? You can leave a rating on the mobile app. You can go to Pull to Open and rate the show. So please go ahead and do that. It's another star rating. I don't think I need to tell you how many stars. It's probably the one that is best suited for Pull to Open, but I leave that up to you, listener. But also, we are doing our when we rate the show, you can also when we rate episode we're talking about, you can also have your voice. That's what I was looking for. Too many ratings I'm juggling in this segment.
Too many ratings, too many bingo cards. It's a problem with Pull to Open.
In addition to rating Pull to Open, we talk about obviously Doctor Who episodes every time. We give it like our rating. We have our 5.5 level rating. You will have your voice as well. So you can leave it in our polls, and we can discuss the results, which I can do right here. So for the Mind of Evil,
I'm excited about this.
Look them up now. So with Mind of Evil, the poll's been out for
Mind of Evil,
By the way,
we both rated that Professor Haters, as I recall. Is that right?
We both rated that. Yeah, it was a double hater.
Did you give it an Ogron? Yeah, double header.
No, didn't do the Ogron. So, and by the way, with these polls, we've made the call to keep them open perpetually going forward, and we'll probably go back and reopen the ones that we've had before because, I know people discover the podcast, go back and binge listen, and I don't want to take away anyone's ability to then have their say. So even though some of the polls are closed, we'll look at reopening them, giving them an end date in the far future. Perhaps the Davros era is when we'll finally close all the polls. And then, and then that'll be it. That'll be all the ratings. But no, go ahead, go to all the episodes that you can, assuming you're listening to this in the far future.
So there's still time. There's still time to un-Viscount Banger Waters of Mars, should you so desire.
Oh, wow. Don't do that. But go ahead and rate the Mind of Evil, like the several people who have done so already. And right now, it's a tie.
Whoa.
I can't believe it. There is a tie with Professor Hater and a Dalek.
What?
A neck and neck. That's impressive.
What? Wow. And my money's on the Hater.
Some of the audience, at least almost 20% of the audience, says it's a Viscount banger. One of the best of the best.
Wow, really?
Roughly about the same amount, about 17%, says it's an Ogron. So a little bit of variety here.
Interesting. It's exciting because, of course, we are at a time when Doctor Who magazine is about to do one of its periodic fan polls. They're going to do it a little differently this time. They're going to do each era of the show separately. But it will be interesting to see if this is backed up by that. Is the Mind of Evil sort of a sleeper hit that a lot of people are getting into? We've sort of not noticed before. Has the colorization really turned people onto it? Who knows? Yeah. So keep voting, folks.
If you're really nostalgic for UNIT, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
And so I could definitely see people liking it. And, if you like to go deep on the sort of philosophical stuff about evil people and this thing sort of taking their impulses and becoming this repository of evil, that's,
If you'd like to go deep on that stuff, have a conversation about it after the story, because the story sure as hell doesn't. But anyway, sorry, Mind of Evil fans, revealing a bit of my bias there, but that's okay. But yeah, keep voting. Keep voting on Spotify, and keep subscribing on YouTube. How about that?
Check us out, youtube.com/pull to open. All of our episodes are there now. Every single episode of Pull to Open, plus our short videos. We have more than 600 subscribers there. We would love it if everyone listening to the podcast now on whatever podcast app you have also go to YouTube, subscribe there. It's really helping the show. We're really aiming to get 1,000 subscribers, and we want to get there before summer. So please subscribe on YouTube. You get to see everything. Plus, you get to see us. And hey, we got lots of great commenters there as well. So check it out. But obviously, all the good stuff, lots of good stuff is happening on Pull to Open. Yes, it's all happening on Pull to Open. It's happening on TikTok, where our handle is Pull to Open. So
soon to be called Pull to Open when we take it over
when we
from the Chinese government. Yes.
And we had a bunch of videos for The Mind of Evil go up this past week. And we have really good commenters on TikTok and among our 10,000 followers who are really loyal to the show. Thanks, guys. And for our TikTok comment of the week, it's the same guy who left us our bingo card. It's the Jodie one. He had a great thing to say about the bit about the Master's insecurity and his fear of the Doctor. And where, his fear is essentially the Doctor humiliating him, towering over him.
Yes.
And Joe says this: the Doctor floating over the Master is referenced in the last of the Time Lords. Randomizer connection he didn't talk about. And I was like, oh, he's right. At the end of Last of the Time Lords, the Doctor comes out of his little Dobby Doctor persona, and he gets all sort of messianic, and he's towering over him. And it's kind of the real world equivalent of that scene, even though he's not laughing at him. Obviously.
He's not laughing, and he's also not large. He is floating above him.
Right.
So is that RTD deliberately making a Mind of Evil reference? I
wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah.
I mean, not large, but it's still like a similar idea, but it's also like flipping the Master's expectation on its head, which I like.
Yes.
Which is that he thinks the Doctor is going to be, mean to him, but instead, of course, he comes in and just sort of hugs him and says, "I forgive you."
It is sort of the Master's greatest fear is the Doctor ascendant, the Doctor triumphant, the Doctor victorious, if you will, to make another randomizer connection to the Wars of Mars. So I do get that. It does definitely play into the same thing with the Master, that really zeroes in on what his character is all about, the way his character works in opposition to the Doctor, and how it's floated back and forth. And we've been to Dark Water, Death in Heaven, where Missy's whole purpose is to give the Doctor a present to make him evil and not to tower over her, as it were, morally speaking. There's definitely a lot to dig into there, and still a lot of folks out there don't get what the Master is about in terms of the Doctor. So these are definitely both moments that help us see that. So good point, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for commenting on TikTok. Please follow us there at Pull to Open. We're doing lives every time we tape. We just did one before, and got to show off a little bit of my room here, where I'm all set up for some Whittaker action.
Yes.
I've even got the TARDIS here because I wanted us to remember what it was like before squids mated in it. So,
wow. Yes. Yeah. It was sullied from that point on, I guess. Ooh, yes. I almost forgot about the squids. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
You can see the Doctor almost like, you could just keep the TARDIS now. No, go ahead.
Exactly. Returns it to Gallifrey like, I've been running around it for a couple of centuries, but the squid action was too much.
If you can't see all that stuff, guys, and you're wondering if you're listening on a podcast app and you're wondering what the clinking is, by the way, I'm having a cuppa right now, my little TARDIS
cup of TARDIS tea.
So that's what all the sipping and clinking is right in a second.
Indeed. All right. Time to clink out of the feedback loop.
Get out of this feedback loop. I'm done with this. And sometimes there's other business to talk about. Sometimes when there's Doctor Who news, we like to get into it at this point in the show. You know what? There still isn't. Nothing worth talking about at this point anyway. Nothing that's gone viral.
About that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before I think it heats up. I think the next development probably will be something to do with Disney Plus. For surprisingly, they announced this whole thing with Disney Plus like last year. Here we are in March, and I'm still watching it on HBO Max. So
yeah,
I don't know what's going on there. Don't know when the switch is flipping, but hopefully you've got a few more months, I guess.
Have it all in one place and not have to have two services to watch all of your Doctor Who. Would be nice, but yeah, we still don't know what's happening with that.
Yeah. Anyway,
but in the meantime, you can set your HBO Max engines to, or your iPlayer engines, if you're listening in the UK, to Orphan 55, which is what we're going to be talking about this week. And we always start off with the part that I am dreading currently this week, which is TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, or Too Long Doctor Who, or Too Long Don't Watch.
Wait, why did you add that one this week, I wonder?
Too long, don't. Whittaker. No, sorry.
Don't Whittaker.
Sorry, Jodie.
Dr. Whittaker?
Anyway. Yes. Too long, Dr. Whittaker.
It's TLDW, guys. And guess who's doing TLDW? If you haven't guessed it already, there's one Chris Taylor. He's got to summarize the story of Orphan 55 in record time. So we allot a full 30 seconds for every classic series episode. And for the new series, which this is a part of, we give a full minute for every episode. And that gives Chris 1 minute, 60 seconds exactly to summarize all the things, whether they make sense or not, of that happens in Orphan 55. So, are you ready, sir?
I am. I'm going to try something different this week, which is to have my own stopwatch running at the same time so I can see how much time I have left.
Hold it up.
If that's allowed under the rules. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's exclusively for judges. Okay, Davros is giving me a thumbs up, I think. So I think we're good.
Is he, or is he just sort of waving his fingers?
I'm going to go with okay. So go ahead.
Okay. All right.
This is not against the rules. This isn't soccer here. All right. All right, folks. The official pull to open summary of Orphan 55 begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the Doctor, Yaz, Graham, and Ryan are on board the TARDIS, and they've just fought off some squid, and Graham has found a thing that, if you put it together, teleports you on holiday. So they get a 2 weeks all-inclusive package to Tranquility Spa, which is somewhere else they're transported to, and other people are there, and they start meeting other people, and Ryan catches a virus in a vending machine, but no, it turns out they're under attack, and guests are being lost, and they're under attack from outside, and it turns out that the outside is somewhere else. There's actually a hologram. It's not actually on this Benidorm-like planet. It's actually on a ravaged planet. And they have to get out there to get away from the monsters who are called the Dregs. And it's surprise, the Dregs turn out to be humanity, because this is actually Earth after climate change. The Doctor says there's only one possible future. They find subway stations as well, and then they defeat the Dregs. I can't remember exactly how, and they get teleported back onto the TARDIS, and then there's a lecture.
There is a lecture. We'll get into the lecture. So not bad. I feel like that was a TLDW that normally we're desperately trying to cram several facts in at the end, but in this case, just kind of petered out. Just like, there's a big shruggy, it seemed like, at the end, where you're like,
kind of like the story itself. I mean, we could really get into stuff like Bella, and Kane, which turns out to be a subplot. We'll get there. But it's like, it's telling, isn't it, that they didn't you don't even really need them. Even though this is supposed to be surprise, another reveal, like Kane, the security chief, is the mother of Bella, the Ryan's love interest.
Right. Yeah.
And she was building the Tranquility Spa for her daughter, and then the daughter comes along to blow it up because mom is too focused on the spa. Did I get that right?
I guess. I mean, I the title Orphan 55 almost applies there, right? Like, I mean, it's almost as multiple meanings, and I guess I still think it's a more choice of. Well, she's not really an orphan, though, because she had her dad, right? She was like caring for her dad.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't they say that? So,
but then her dad died. And then because Ryan says he bonds with her over that because he lost his mum.
So there's arguably like there's a bit of a orphan meaning there, and maybe that's why they ultimately went with the name. But I think it's still like, so to back up on the orphan thing, they call this planet Orphan 55, and it's because orphan planets are apparently these planets that are, I guess, inhabited, but then they just go bad for whatever reason, and the Doctor says the ruling elite usually just sells them off for whatever. Which is like, oh, okay, whatever. It's future galactic politics and economies. I guess this sort of makes sense. But the problem is scientifically, like we already, like, if you know anything about cosmology and astronomy, and I'll admit, like, maybe a mainstream audience doesn't know this, but it certainly got me going. Like, an orphan planet just is a planet with no sun, right? Like, there's sort of an equivalent term called a rogue planet. But I remember when they said this is Orphan 55 and they say it's an orphan planet, immediately, and I would think a lot of the Doctor Who audience is like this because we're all nerds and we're thinking about astronomy and we know about it. We think, oh, so it's a planet without a sun. But then it's like, oh, no, wait a minute. She says it's this other type of sort of discarded planet that's just a barren wasteland. So it's like, couldn't that just sort of randomly apply to a lot of planets? Like, it feels like not really much of a category. And also, while in such a fast-paced episode, I'm going to give it some points for trying to do certain things. And one of the things, it's like this fast-paced action thriller.
Yeah, it's trying to be Aliens.
You're getting thrown a lot of stuff at every turn, and there's a turn and a twist and another twist and another turn. And to get this orphan thing, there's this and a couple other things. Like, you're wasting unnecessary brain power trying to figure it out when you really should be paying attention to the story, which is coming at you fast and furious. So it really
there's no space in which to think about any of this. No space really to wonder anything beyond, like, what are the dregs? Why are they killing the guests? Okay, like, that's sort of what you're primed to think by all this action, and action movie music, and just we're getting chased down corridors, and they're giant corridors, and it just, yes, this is very this is why it's like Doctor Who written by AI. It's like, oh, there must be a quarry. Oh, there must be a large corridor, and we have been visiting a lot of large corridors recently on Pull to Open. But
there are two different kinds of corridors here. You got the sort of spa corridors, which are very nice and neat, and then you have the sewer corridors, I guess, which are not.
Contrasting corridors. That's what you've got to get in Doctor Who. Contrasting corridors. Definitely a rejected title for the show. But also, in randomizer terms, what might you call it instead of Orphan 55? This mysterious planet. Perhaps you could call it the Mysterious Planet, and it would become more mysterious when you find a freaking subway station in it. Yes, that's right, folks. Orphan 55 steals a plot point from the first story in Trial of a Time Lord, which is, if you were wondering, in the Christian era, like, what they really want to throw in here is references to Trial of a Time Lord. I really want to be thinking about Mysterious Planet again. Then you have got your wish.
And it's also Earth, right? Like, both episodes, the big reveal, it's Earth, and Earth was destroyed either by, in this case, humanity's own hand for, I guess, ignoring global warming for too long. And in the case of the Mysterious Planet, by the Time Lords, which obviously two different points they're making. But I mean,
but in this case, you'd probably be more surprised if it wasn't Earth. You'd be surprised if it wasn't Earth. That would be the big reveal. I mean, it's just so. True. Oh God, I remember rolling my eyes the first time I watched this, and I rolled them even harder this time. I know it's unfortunate because, look, we do like to stay positive on Pull to Open. We do. These television is hard. Doctor Who is hard. It's hard to put. It's hard to put together. Stories are hard. It's hard to stick the landing. Like, we don't want to be just like armchair generals here, right? We want to appreciate everything that's done, and a lot of this looks very nice. I will say that. I really liked. I liked the vending machine virus thing. That when Ryan gets it, like that felt very Douglas Adams to me this time. It was interesting coming straight from Douglas Adams' story, where he kind of disrespected Doctor Who while being a bit Douglas Adamsy, in Destiny of the Daleks. And here it's sort of used wisely and properly and for comedy purposes. So but it kind of just squanders all that.
I think it's tempting to jump on something. Obviously, with the Whittaker era has its detractors, and I think there's a lot of things like that sort of Hopper virus you could jump on pretty easily. But I think that I think you're right in that it's done in such a humorous way. I really like the humor there, and this is it's Doctor Who science. A lot of Doctor Who is Doctor Who science, right? Like if anyone's ever thinking like, oh, this isn't accurate or nitpicking on a thing when, say, Whittaker says this Hopper virus is multi-platform and using that as a catch-all phrase that it can infect both machinery and people. That's just a thing that Doctor Who does, and it doesn't. You don't have to like spell out exactly how that works. It's just how it works, and you go with it. And I think if of all the sort of fam. This is obviously Tosin Cole and Ryan is the one that is featured the most here, and he does great. He does this great little slapstick moment where he's like, I forget what he's doing exactly, smacking himself around and trying to get the virus out of him, and then he has to suck his thumb. Well, then, he's batting away at imaginary bats. That was it.
Imaginary bats. That was a lovely moment. Nice, nice Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas reference. We can't stay here. This is bat country. Actually, I remember sort of being irked by that the first time around. This time I loved it. So there are definitely moments in Orphan 55 that I appreciated more this time around. But I did not appreciate the overall structure, did not appreciate the mysterious planet reference, did not appreciate the fact that it was, did not appreciate the tone of the messaging. And I am someone who
we're doing that, are we?
Yeah. I mean,
let's go right to it.
Let's get right to it, because this is, supposed to be, well, on the one hand, it's supposed to be like an homage to Aliens or whatever, that kind of style of action film where an alien is chasing you down a corridor and it's mean and evil. But also the twist is that these aliens are us in the future, and they're an angry tree. Basically, they're breathing out oxygen and breathing in carbon dioxide because we've had to adapt, because it turns out this is our planet and climate change has happened. But then, as soon as we find that it's our planet, it just takes on this tone. It becomes preachy, and I'm all for tackling climate change in fiction. Like, we absolutely need to do that. And I will say that I've recently been listening again to the audiobook of Ministry for the Future. It's a Kim Stanley Robinson novel, which does sort of tackle climate change in a positive sense. Sort of saying exactly how bad it's going to get, but also here are the steps we can take to mitigate it. Let's fictionalize it. And it has its problems. It is also a bit too preachy. That sort of is kind of inherent when you're it comes to the territory when you're talking about climate change. Like, we are screwed if we don't all pull together on this, right? It is super important, and the 21st century definitely needs to figure out how to put this in stories effectively so that it stays top of mind for people, even when weird weather isn't happening, right? But this isn't how you do it, folks.
This is not how you do it. It doesn't, honestly, it's not how you do it in not just Doctor Who, and I have very Doctor Who specific complaints about the choices they made to do it. But I just don't think you do this in fiction. Like I just got to go right to the end. Holy cow, that ending! Like my instinct was just like, if you listen to the Rosa podcast we did, I criticized it for feeling like an after school special. Dude, that is like the best subtlest drama compared to the final scene here in Orphan 55, where the Doctor just essentially gets on a podium and it has, I think, to your point, an AI written screed on what to do about how bad climate change is going to be and what to do about it. Like, you're just either just like putting your finger in your mouth or doing a wanking motion. Okay, I get it. Thank you, Chris Chibnall. You didn't have to come out of the television with a hammer and slam it into my head until it's a bloody pulp. Like, I got it. Thank you. I mean, can you imagine this in like the environmental messages are not new to Doctor Who. We've gone over several of them in the classic series, and this is. Can you imagine if the end of Inferno was essentially John Pertwee turning to the Brigadier and Liz, oh, that was close, and we should all feel bad. And like, remember, we have the power to prevent these kinds of things from happening, and let's change our society and our incentive structures so we aren't led astray down the path of destruction. And megalomaniacs don't take control of this and then turn to camera. And you can choose to do things right, because if you don't, cut to Primord. You know, like, if that was the end of Inferno, that season 7 would have been the end of Doctor Who. Okay, like,
yep,
it would have been
absolutely.
just like, holy cow, this is the worst show. No, or they would have moved it to like 5 p.m. on weekdays or something, because it's a tea time spot.
In Doctor Who history, we know there's only one occasion where the Doctor has broken the fourth wall and turned directly to camera, and it's in the Feast of Stephen. Where he wishes the viewers, Happy Christmas. Now, it's never been like that again, but this is the closest. The Doctor is practically looking directly at you.
To be really fair, Whittaker does not actually talk directly to the audience, but I gotta think, I do believe the drag does. Cuts to the drag just roaring.
Cuts the drag looking at you.
I'm here to scare you, even though there's no one around.
I mean, I guess you could say the end of Blink, which we kind of criticized when we went to Blink, as like the only dud note, is like the end of Blink, where it's like the Doctor looking directly at you, from the video screen and intercutting with statues. But that's not really like, clearly there's no message here. Yeah, like there's not a serious statue crisis on Earth.
And I'm sure that bit has its fans too, because it is sort of the equivalent of the final horror scare, and they set it up with the whole videotape. So he's talking to camera there, and that's obviously part of the story, so it's fine. So it's nowhere near this level of sort of preachiness.
Here's how preachy it was. I was watching this episode with a friend who doesn't watch. Actually, funnily enough, Blink is the only episode they've seen other than this, and they turned to me after the Doctor had given that that ending speech and just said, "Thank you for coming to my TED Talk." And that should be like, if you are a scriptwriter and so you've put a speech in your story, and people can put that phrase in after whatever your screed is, and it works. Like it sounds funny because it punctures the pomposity of what you've just been saying. Then you probably shouldn't write that speech. You shouldn't let that first draft nonsense get into your final script, because climate change is vital. It is an existential threat to the planet, but story is everything.
Yeah, story's everything. And honestly, like, I wonder how this even made it to air. Like, I honestly look at Chris Chibnall and I'm just like, dude, you're better than this. Like, you should be better than this, at least. Like,
and Rosa was better than this. Like, people talk about the end of Rosa being after school specialist. You mentioned that. And it does a bit. But also, do you remember also, like, we're looking at the asteroid with Rosa Parks' name. So you're sort of taking that in at the same time, right? Oh, she is sort of immortalized. And like, I'm even getting a little bit of a chill thinking about that now, right? It's effective because you are somewhat distracted by that. Perhaps you never knew Rosa Parks had an asteroid. So you're sort of like, and that allows the after school specialishness of what Whittaker's saying in that moment, which is relatively benign, to wash over.
I was critical of that too, but I wasn't angry about it the way I kind of was about this. And it's just so ham-fisted. And this is just not that there are ways to do this kind of story. Obviously there are, that don't throw it in your face like this. Because I also feel like, whether obviously Chibnall had his politics, and he put chunks of that in the show. And I think that's perfectly valid. I mean, if you're a showrunner and you're going to do that, like, obviously you want to be mindful of the broader audience, but I think it's completely okay to have messaging. It's just that to your point, storytelling has to be king, and to have your lead come in at the end and essentially spell out the message, I believe that essentially ends discussion. It doesn't intrigue you. It doesn't make you want to go, oh, I've worked out what this means on my own, even if it might be like subtle, and then have a conversation with someone after. You don't want to. You just kind of turn the TV off in disgust and go, wow, I hope next week's better.
Yeah, exactly. It does. I had that feeling watching that wrap up. Is like you could be the most kind of committed environmentalist, worried about the future of the planet, and watch this and kind of almost be like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not like if that's the kind of if you're going to preach at me like that, like I don't know what you're talking about already. Like I haven't taken that on board that we can either help the planet or destroy it. We can either be, yeah, get it, got it. Got it years ago. What the hell? Like, it could actually counteract what you're trying to do, with your environmental message. And Chibnall just doesn't get that.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the end now, I actually have one more, not to pile on, but I have one more complaint about this, and it's very Doctor Who specific. So when she is talking about the Earth ending up this way, she says specifically, the Doctor says specifically, this is one possible future. It doesn't necessarily mean this is going to happen, but we have to change to ensure that it doesn't. And, it's obviously all part of the message. But to me, this gets it even more wrong, gets Doctor Who wrong, because Doctor Who has always, not always, but generally the way it approaches time and the future is that all of time and space are open to the characters and thus, the audience. But it doesn't treat future history any differently than past history. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Like, yes, certainly we don't know the future as people in the present, so you kind of have to just do whatever. But I love that the Doctor has this knowledge of what happens in the future, and it's not complete, but when it's done right, and I think a good example of this actually is The Waters of Mars, where he goes to a point in the future of future events and is like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen here. And, everything happens there with him changing it. But then obviously him being the Time Lord is the X factor. Doctor Who doesn't treat the future this way. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, just because it's giving too much special nature to the present that for some reason the time we're watching the show is the place where things diverge. That's not how the show treats time. And it's not how space-time works. I mean, if you read anything about real space-time stuff from, say, I've talked about the works of Brian Greene several times in the show, but you really get an appreciation that it's actually kind of wondrous how everything in the universe is connected through space-time, but that there is absolutely nothing special about what we perceive to be the present moment, and it's a big sort of thing in physics and metaphysics actually on like is there anything special about experiencing these moments, these sort of photographs one after another, these temporal photographs like a movie? Why are we experiencing this moment and not the moment 5 seconds ago or 20 years from now, right? Like there's no one knows why. There's nothing special about it. So it's this sort of problem
about our brains can't experience it all at once, so we have to process it linearly. And I totally get that.
The most frustrating thing is that there is a way to do Orphan 55, and I will get to praising good things about the episode, by the way. I think there's fun stuff in this episode, but there is a way to do this story that comports with that vision. You can do it with you don't even have to have it be Earth, right? Like to your point, you can make the twist something else. You can put this message more subtly and better in a Doctor Who episode. This is not it. This completely does number one, ham-fisted messaging, which is always a bad idea, but it also doesn't do it in a way that really respects the show's the way the show treats time, and I find it very frustrating for that reason.
Agreed. And if you're going to change it, then say that it's a change. And it is interesting because I realized that as you were talking, this is another reason for the randomizer to bring us here from Destiny of the Daleks. Destiny of the Daleks, as we saw last week, a story where Douglas Adams came in fresh as a script editor and kind of messed around with how the show treats regenerations, how the show treats the Daleks. Like Terry Nation didn't like his work on that. And this is kind of a similar thing. You're absolutely right. Like the Doctor Who is a place of fixed points in time, and things do turn out differently, but in parallel universes, and there are big walls between the universes in Doctor Who, as we found out in Doomsday. That's kind of the rule. Yes, it's one possible future, but we're in it. It's like the Doctor is usually only traveling in one timeline. right?
Yeah,
and there are
exactly.
fixed points in that timeline. Very, very rarely does she go to parallel universes. So if that's what you're doing here, say that.
Yeah, and Doctor Who certainly doesn't have like consistency. I mean, production teams come and go, and many volumes have been written trying to factor every single story into the same universe, and you have to contort things for that to work. But that is the rule. You're right. Like there are rules to this, even if it isn't consistent. Like there is a framework, and this episode just doesn't respect the framework. And it's it's not cool. And I get why they did it, because they wanted to connect it. And they didn't have to do this. They wanted to connect it more strongly with contemporary Earth and the problems of today. But
you don't do that by hitting it on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That doesn't mean you have to have it be essentially contemporary Earth, or like the day after tomorrow, or whatever this is supposed to be. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, you're a Star Trek fan, and you well know that the original Star Trek series was designed to tackle a lot of political issues on Earth, but just without going to them directly, right?
Yeah.
You don't actually have all of the groundbreaking stuff that took place, like the first interracial kiss, all of that. You don't actually set it on Earth. You set it far away in another context, and that way people can approach it. So yeah, the more you're talking, the more I'm like, why not just make this another planet that's having problems with climate change? We haven't really seen that very much in Doctor Who history, where we see another case of species-made climate change. That would be an interesting thing to visit.
That would be a totally interesting thing to visit. And you could get really extreme with it. I mean, they get extreme with it here. But, as you were talking there about Star Trek, certainly there were some episodes where they kind of spelled out a little bit of the lesson in the last little exchange with the bridge crew, but it wasn't preachy. It was done in a way that was actually usually pretty fun, because the actors would be sort of playing off the personalities a bit. There was a little humor to it, and little sort of wistfulness about what ifs or what have you. Again, that didn't always hit it out of the park, but it didn't piss you off. It was just kind of a good way to sort of, leave the viewers with something that in case it went a little bit over their heads. And again, it was a different time, it was the 60s. And so sort of this messaging might have been, you kind of needed to handhold a little bit more, particularly with science fiction. Like kind of convince people it was about the world, right? Whereas today we get it. Everything's science fiction. The nerds have taken over. You don't if anything, it should be subtler.
Yeah, exactly. Make it more of a metaphor, more of a, let us draw the message out. Well, as regular listeners know, we're not the only ones whose opinion counts or is mentioned during the show. Pete, you watch this with your kids?
I do.
What do they think of the climate change messaging?
Well, see, this is a good segue, because I think we can segue into the good parts of Orphan 55, and there are good parts. So my kids liked it. They both thought it was pretty good, though they all both, and it's telling, like Grace, she just had a birthday. She's 10 now. And so she's 10.
Happy birthday, Grace.
Thank you. And Jack is 13. And they both liked it, but even Grace was a little like, holy cow, that ending, just that was a little over the top. And they kind of even laughed when the Dreg came out at the end, even though Grace was pretty scared of the Dregs. So that there is good sort of horror thriller action stuff with the Dregs. She needed some help sort of getting to sleep that night. Again, I'm father of the year. And, so but they both, I mean, even as kids, they felt it was a condescending ending, which is that tells you a lot. But they did like the message, I think as kids sort of might give you some hope for kids today, and sort of like, oh yeah, I get it. It's obviously they got everyone who could, the cat got it, but it's right. I think they agree with the messaging of climate change is a problem. We'll have, very serious consequences if we don't do something about it. And they liked seeing that depicted. Jack liked the horror aspects too. And he even mentioned this stuff with the elderly couple, Benny and I forgot the woman's name.
Velma, is it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, Vilma, that's right.
So and that's a good that's a good transition to yes, there's some good stuff with Orphan 55, and notably the guest cast I think is quite good. Everyone's pretty memorable. except maybe Kane. Kane might be a little off.
Yeah.
But generally, they're not all just sort of cannon fodder. And so that's pretty good, even though that first guard, who I think dies pretty quickly, you don't get to know much about him.
Right. I mean, it is really, Orphan 55 is really a tale of three acts that almost have nothing to do with each other. You know, the first act is kind of leisure hive, right? You know, we've been here before. We've been here in Doctor Who. The Doctor goes on vacation, the vacation goes wrong. You know, it's midnight, it's leisure hive. There's a whole bunch of stories going back into Doctor Who history where vacation isn't everything it's seen, but, you know, we're in a resort, tranquility spa. I like that aspect of it. That's where you get the fun, you know, the vending machine virus and Ryan seeing bats and all that good stuff. And Ryan trying the worst chat-up lines in the world. Then, all of a sudden, it's aliens. Almost out of nowhere, there are guns, there's dramatic music, and let's just talk for a moment about guns in Doctor Who, because it is like they're always there for the Doctor to say no guns, right? Yes, I get it, and occasionally the Doctor does use a gun. I remember seeing a wonderful YouTube video that kind of stitches all those moments together of the Doctor being a badass with a gun. It does happen, but you know, generally, like this is an anti-gun show, right? And yet, the second act of Orphan 55 absolutely delights in its thriller, action, gun, jammed in your face kind of characterization, kind of plot. You know, and Kane is sort of the classic example of like she's a cardboard cutout from an Alien-style movie,
only without any of the personality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's Ripley if Ripley had been completely trained of personality.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
the Doctor's even saved by a gun. I mean, it's Kane, and you know, she's at the Dreg leader, who we later find out is the leader, I believe. And then Kane just shoots it and doesn't kill it, but it saves the Doctor. So you know.
But there are just
can't really
too many stories. Exactly. That's the thing. It's like this story wants to have its cake and eat it. It wants to kind of, you know, inveigh against the message, you know, give you the message that it does in the third act, but in the second act, it wants to be an action thriller. It wants to copy Hollywood. Which is Doctor Who just shouldn't ever do. Don't copy Hollywood. You're not Hollywood. You're Doctor Who. Right, and I think RTD got this. RTD knows how to import some elements and the right ones, but this was like just straight up copying, right?
Yeah, I get it. I don't think you're saying don't have action, because I do like big action sequences and fun, and you know, Doctor Who has adult themes, which is to its credit. You know, people die, and a lot of people die in this one. Kind of too many in some aspects. So all of that's fine. But yeah, there's a bit of, I guess, inconsistency particularly with Whittaker's Doctor, who a season ago was smacking guns out of Ryan's hand, even though I think he was only using it to shoot even robots or something like that. So, and you know, the kind of, and in other words, like, I think even the morality of the show during the Whittaker era was very unsure of itself and would sort of reverse every now and then. Like, do we want to be like pacifists? And then at some point they were like, oh no. And this, I think if they're trying to send a message that, no, we're not pacifists, then this is the episode that hammers that home. Because there's bombs that explode. And I'll try to use this as a jumping off point to talk a little bit about Bella and her relationship with Ryan. So Bella, as we learn, is essentially a terrorist who is related to Kane. I guess she's her daughter. And she has no compunctions about, you know, murdering a bunch of people and blowing up this place. And I got to say, I feel like she's never really shown to pay for that or be the villain. Like, I think the script generally makes you sympathetic for her, and I think that's a really weird call. Like, you get the final scene where Ryan and her are kind of looking at each other and saying goodbye, and she's sort of strangely sacrificing herself, I guess probably because she didn't expect to live through this thing.
Right.
And they're sort of sucking thumbs at each other and making goo-goo eyes. And it's just a little bit like, wait a minute, you know, she just like essentially killed a bunch of people and like was going to blow up the place. Like, she's a terrorist. Like, what are you doing?
And it is such a waste because this time around, like I feel like we've been to some good episodes for Ryan. Witchfinders and Rosa were both good Ryan episodes, and it's definitely made me rethink my notion that was very much on display in Revolution of the Daleks, that Ryan was the weakest member of the fam. Which he kind of was in some ways, but he clearly had a lot of better scenes. I didn't remember. This is one of them. His whole, you kind of want to pull for him and for her to kind of get together at the end, right? Like, it just, the fact that he's so inept, she's like calling out his bad chat up lines, but saying, you know, shame you weren't actually trying to chat me up. You know, like, you know, this, it's cute. Like, that's the best actual characterization in the whole thing. And then it completely gets ruined by this revelation that she's a terrorist. And as you say, that being not dealt with by Ryan at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I like that reversal that she's like, I think she says she's unemployed. First she says she's a critic, then she's unemployed, and then she's a terrorist. So it's this, it reverses the expectation, which is really cool. And that's fine. And then Ryan's sort of like, oh, I was liking this person, but it seems reluctant to go all the way with it. It doesn't make her to be the bad guy, even though she's the bad guy. It's like just totally like, what are we doing? And then so the dregs are the bad guy, I guess, and they're just trying to live, man. So.
And then again, exactly, they're just trying to live, and they are us. So there should be this reversal that, again, the script is sort of too ham-fisted to incorporate. There should be a reversal where we really start to feel sympathy for the dregs. Sympathy for the Dregs, by the way, a little-known Rolling Stones song, rejected title for his Satanic Majesty's album. But yes, we're supposed to have sympathy for the Dregs. We do not have it. Yes. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a drag of wealth and taste.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
With Bella, well, no, I was just going to say, like, Bella, you're kind of, I guess, invited to be sympathetic to her, particularly when she gives you her reasoning of like, oh, I guess my mom walked out on me and never decided to raise me, so I'm going to get back at her by blowing up her resort, which is a little bit like, you know, I was hard on the fam for the doctor leaving them for 10 months, and I'm going to be even more hard on Bella. Like, grow the hell up. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what about not becoming a terrorist? How about don't do that? And,
how about go to therapy?
Just deal with it. Yeah, how about go to therapy? It's like...
I'm a terrorist because my mom isn't home enough.
I feel like that just shows really lacking a moment where someone just like tells her like, you're bad. Like no, like, and just saying that is not even slightly a justification for the things you're doing. And I gotta say, I know this is probably it. I don't want to be too hard on this choice because I get it. So they make Kane and Bella sort of different races, right? And I think this is sort of showing like, oh, I guess she was adopted, or in, you know, this, I don't know. It's not, I don't know if that's future-y, but I guess it's a little more future-y or whatever. But I think it's, again, similar to naming this thing Orphan 55. While I appreciate sort of trying to represent mixed families and doing a little bit of inclusion there, it's just, again, one extra thing to think about as you're wondering this, particularly since this is sort of a mystery type thing. And you're like, okay, so, oh, I guess the daughter mother relationship I was supposed to not see coming, or wait, maybe I should mistrust it. Does it even make sense? And you kind of like, so you, again, I get with it why they did it. I think this isn't the episode to do it in, just because too much stuff is coming at you so fast, and to throw that in as well, you're just like, you're just got too much inventorying in your head to do.
This is one of those moments where I feel like Chibnall was sort of ill-served by coming after RTD and Moffat, right? Because they both, RTD and Moffat, to varying degrees and with varying success, pack in a lot of stuff. Pack in a lot of storyline, pack in a lot of characterization. And here's where RTD does excel. He is very, very good at drawing a character in a few lines so that you just sort of get them. And that is what Chibnall and the writer, we haven't even mentioned the actual writer of this, who previously wrote It Takes You Away, right, in the previous season. And
Ed
I'm
Heim.
trying to remember his name. Ed Heim, yes. Reportedly, this script was resulted from the writers' room discussions in the previous season, and what ended up on screen was very, very different from what he first pitched. But anyway, yeah, he clearly, he under the direction of Chibnall is writing something that tries to do that. The characterization with the old couple, for example, and then Benny is about to propose, and you're like, I get it. Like, that's a nice, quick way to do characterization, but maybe just don't put in so many characters. Especially not when you've got a TARDIS team that is so, you need to manage 3 people already. And in this episode, I think Yaz gets really shortchanged. She barely has anything to say.
She just kind of runs around a bit and shows concern for Ryan and whoever else.
Yeah.
And obviously looks very sullen at the end after being lectured to by the Doctor about how humanity is destroying the planet. Yeah, Yaz is very altered with this. I will say Graham has some nice moments early on. Obviously, he's the person who gets the whole thing going. And he's very funny. I will say, like, he has some of the best lines. The Speedos line is genuinely hilarious. And it's a really good joke.
Yes,
it's so good a joke that it's a little bit almost too far for Graham, right? It's almost like switches characters for a second to get in a really funny joke. It's
already wearing his
right?
Speedos.
Like he's a bit sly. He's an old guy who's been around the block a few times, but it's also
it doesn't match up with. It doesn't match up with how he behaves when he gets to the resort, does it? Either, right? Like, he's just sitting around having a drink. Like, he didn't need his Speedos anyway.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's not keen to get in that pool. And to be honest, I gotta say, like, if you're gonna say this is a super resort that everyone's excited to get to, make it maybe look a bit more exciting. Maybe spend a bit more of the budget that you're spending later on and making, on the monsters to actually make the resort look cool. I don't know. Maybe just choose between one of these 3 stories that Orphan 55 is trying to be, right? Is it an action thriller? Is it a holiday gone wrong? Is it, or is it, a climate change metaphor? Right, or not even metaphor, but a climate change TED Talk.
Or is it some kind of thing about dealing with your family issues? Which, again, one of the better lines. I liked Whittaker's line about, you should really just settle this with a sort of a passive-aggressive conversation like most families. Like, I thought that was a pretty good line. Although, generally, I would say Whittaker's performance here, I think, is very good, but I think it's better if you watch this season start to finish, because I do feel like she's a little bit angrier here than she usually is, particularly with those early scenes when she's figuring out the linen closet, and she's just a little too quick to dress people down at that point and point out how smart she is and what she's trying to do. But coming just off Spyfall, where she's just learned that Gallifrey is destroyed, and they do make a slight mention of it early, right? There's a bit like, hey, why are you so glum and being quiet over there, Doctor? And she's like, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. So you get that a little more here, right? So I think this is Whittaker making a deliberate choice at Chibnall's instruction, just kind of like, this is the arc of the season, and you kind of need to be a little more on edge and slightly mean, which I think she does okay here while still sort of being the Doctor. It's not overt. So good for her. Though, if you come into this cold like we do on all of our episodes, it doesn't throw you off a bit. It just maybe she's not as likable as she usually is, because I do find Whittaker generally more likable than this.
Right, and if you're, to your point, if you're going to have a season arc, then you sort of need to throw in a reminder if we haven't been paying attention to the previous week. Like, maybe she could be looking, maybe just throw in a scene where she's tapping out something on the console, and the console says, yes, Gallifrey's been destroyed, or something like that. Just something to confirm it. In the way, what I'm thinking of is like the whole season 6 arc about Amy and Rory being pregnant and not pregnant at the same time. Remember that, right? They would remind you of that by having the Doctor kind of look concerned at the console, during several episodes, just to keep it top of mind. All of the season arcs do that. Like, you talk about the hybrid, or you mention Bad Wolf, or some mention gets thrown of Torchwood. Whatever it is, you got to actually mention it for it to be a season arc, and for the Doctor to just be like, "I'm staying quiet about something that is very important to me, but I'm not telling any of you." That doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's never going to work.
For episodic TV, like we all need reminders. So yeah, it's not enough to just have her be sullen in the corner for a second. Like you need something more explicit. So getting back to something I did like, probably more the second time around, because I knew the twist, was the Dregs themselves, and they have a pretty scary design. They are believably killers. Like they could pretty easily kill folks, although I do think they go pretty quickly from sort of this looming, creeping threat to essentially playing Doom in the hotel, and they're just these demons that are just eating people instantly. So, but that said, they don't move very fast, right? You see them sort of walking on the landscape, which I think is good, because if you make things too powerful, then your people can't really believably either evade them or fight them. So, but it also makes sense when you know the reveal, because these are supposedly evolved or adapted humans that have gone primal, and it makes sense they'd be humanoid, and they wouldn't really be able to go much faster than a human. They're just kind of walking around. So that works really well. Although I don't understand why you would adapt. I guess it's just all environmental, but to switch from breathing oxygen to breathing carbon dioxide, like just do a complete 180. I'll go with it. Again, it's Doctor Who science. I don't think it ruins the show at all. And again, that's actually a pretty good twist in the tunnels. Especially like I go, this is one of the best parts of the episode, where Kane has the line, "You talk too much." She's talking to the Doctor. "You're running out of oxygen." And it nails the Doctor. Yes, because she's always literally, in this case, literally sucking the oxygen out of the room, and it's working against her. Like her top quality of being the person in charge and knowing everything and always talking is about to kill her. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and it is a nice reveal when we learn that the Dregs are actually adding oxygen to the corridor. But like that seems to change nothing about anyone's intentions with the Dregs. I mean, I guess the Dreg that's herded into the cage has done so more politely. I don't know, but like it just feels like we needed that again. We've talked on this on the show before about this notion that you need to say something twice if you want the audience to get the importance of it. And this script and a lot of Chibnall doesn't do that. Doesn't say it twice. So you're like, wait a minute. I think they said that they're breathing out oxygen, and oh, okay, that's interesting. Is that, I don't even have time to think about that. I'm being dragged onto something else because it's another action sequence.
Jack liked that scene with the cage. I thought it was okay. I think as a plot device, it works. I think two things. I think you're absolutely right. They should have had made a little bit more about the breathing and the O2 versus the CO2. But also like the intelligence, even though she said they're intelligent, you're not really feeling it. You needed a little more. Yeah. You need a little more of everything in this. Like you say, like they should have picked a storyline and went with it and fleshed it out, because you get I think the only hint of the Dregs' intelligence before this is the trap that they set for the van. And then they'd have to have some intelligence to be able to do that. And I guess there's a little bit with the Benny stuff, because they keep Benny alive. And I don't think that was, deliberate to fool anybody. But and I got to say that's a pretty good bit too, because it's very adult.
You don't see it.
That they've kept you, and you never see it. So you're always imagining something more horrific than what probably actually happens to him. But it's that's a good little bit there. So with the cage itself, it's this sudden twist that it can sort of listen and understand and go in and be sort of peaceful. It's a little too far. It was a little too far for me. I just didn't buy it. It was clearly being done for plot and not to make in a sort of way that I was believing that the Dregs would actually do that, given what we'd seen of them in the episode that far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish more effort had been put into the Dregs, like less into the costume, more into the character or the concept, instead of just having gurgling and growling, which is like, again, just like, is that what our language evolves into? I just don't get it. We just become monsters. Like even Morlocks in the Time Machine, like have more to say, even though they have a monster appearance, but the Dregs are just cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, totally.
And you can't just tell. You've got to show, not tell, if they are intelligent. Anyway, they
leave you with a lot of questions, perhaps.
They do. Thank you. I was looking for a cheesy segue.
We have our own questions about Orphan 55, and these are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question among the 4 is, of course, why did the randomizer take us here? I feel like we've answered this, but
yeah, we have. There's so many things that summarize them all. The quarries that you mentioned, I was like, Destiny of the Daleks is sort of, it's a bit boring, and oh my God, this is Doctor Who, showing us like the new show can do much more, boring stuff and confusing stuff and bad story stuff, than the old show ever could. Like I would watch Destiny of the Daleks 4 times before I watched Orphan 55 again. Again, it's wrapped up in my childhood, like we discussed that last week, but still, like it's not a particularly great story. I'm able to see that. So this is an example of that. I think there's also the written by AI thing, which I mentioned at the start of the show. Still have that sense of it, that it really just feels like it's written by committee. I feel like it's almost a warning for the randomizer, like, especially with the mysterious planet connection. Like it feels like this is not a warning of what could happen to the future of the planet. This is a warning of what could happen to the future of Doctor Who. Right? If showrunners aren't careful,
it's the pull to open equivalent of turning to camera and warning us on how not to do Doctor Who. I think that is essentially it, right? Obviously, ask for quarries. I actually don't know if they did actual quarries or if this was all studio or whatever. It feels like they went to a quarry. I didn't look it up. But the other connection, I think you're right, with Destiny of the Daleks is that each of these episodes, in my view, gets Doctor Who wrong in big ways. And we talked about Destiny of the Daleks at the time and sort of the balance between humor and drama and taking it seriously, and particularly the Daleks, who have a storied history and have rules to them that are totally broken in Destiny of the Daleks, and for the worse. And here, very similar, like with all the time, the way it treats time, the way it treats messaging. It's a stunning example of getting the show wrong, I think. And
disrespecting certain fundamentals of the show, as you pointed out, with the time stream thing, the different universes thing, like that's new. So say so. The same could be said of Romana's regeneration. And by the way, I do want to kind of add something to something I said last week about Romana's regeneration. We talked about how it was just like not how it's done, not seen it before. Show before. Watching it again, because I did watch it one more time, I noticed that it was like the Doctor who was asking for Romana to change her body, and then she's like goes away and like, oh, okay, I'll show you. Here's what you asked for. So I feel like we kind of missed the Doctor's agency in that. Kind of softens it a little bit. So yeah, I think overall this may disrespect Doctor Who canon more than Destiny of the Daleks. The randomizer's like, oh, you want to see that? Let's take a look at where it's really, really badly done. This is more fundamental than the Romana regeneration.
Oh, wow. The randomizer said, hold my beer.
Exactly.
I thought that was not good. Okay. Moving on to the second question, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so the
whole story is the evil plot succeeding.
Yeah.
Like it's humanity's evil plot to destroy itself, and whatever. She actually lists a bunch of things, not just global warming, which is clouds the message even more. But it's pretty clearly she's talking, like they mentioned global warming more than once. But neglect of the environment, neglect of our own planet. So arguably that's what it is. I don't know. then if you want to get granular, you could look at the Dregs, or you could look at Bella. The Dregs just want to eat people.
Bella's evil plot would be to just blow the whole thing up, I guess. I wasn't entirely clear on her evil plot.
And it's also unclear if she thought to even get away, because the Hopper virus is one of the first things that happens, is that it disables the teleport. So she can't get off the planet, presumably. So she would die too. Did she factor that in? I mean, I guess you get the sense that Bella hasn't thought things through, right? She's a terrorist. She's not thinking rationally. She just wants revenge on her mom for whatever perceived issues that she was subject to. So
for being a latchkey kid.
Yeah. So being a latchkey kid. So I guess that's the kind of the evil plot. And if it succeeds, the whole place blows up and she dies along with everyone else.
And the Doctor and the fam.
Unless they fix the teleport, yeah.
Unless they fix the teleport, yeah. And if not, then it's end of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And unless she can crawl out from the wreckage and regenerate into David Tennant, maybe. Who knows?
Some intervention from the cosmic being for that to happen.
Exactly.
So that's pretty boring. And the Dreg plot. I mean, the Dreg would just eat everybody. So that's also like everyone dies. So even it's not even interesting if the evil plot succeeds here. I mean,
the Dreg's evil plot is to replace all the carbon dioxide with oxygen. How evil is that?
Worth noting, it was pretty confused about the company that I guess runs the resort, which I presumably is Kane. I mean, is there a company? I mean, early on they talk about this is a kind of a racket. It's this thing people do. It's like you bankroll a terraform, or maybe, I don't know, maybe that's her idea. I think it's like that. I'm going to bankroll the terraform by having a resort and charging a lot for it, which kind of brings up the question why you're giving away coupons. But regardless, so there's that. So it almost thankfully it doesn't add yet another sort of message or plot to its way too crowded episode already. But you're almost thinking this is going to be a bit of an anti-capitalist screed as well. That it's like, oh, this nameless, faceless company has been doing shoddy work about and not really being honest with its customers on this resort. And that's going to end up. It's like a little bit like, what was the Titanic episode, Voyage of the Damned? Because that ends up being sort of the big bad in that episode. But then they just sort of forget about that, and then they sort of say, Kane, this is Kane's resort. She was going to gift it to Bella, and that and again,
it's her resort, but she's like head of security. Why would you do? I don't even get
why is she even there.
Kane is about,
Yeah, and so you're again, it's all about the short shrift given to even that relationship and that plot. Like nothing's thought through, and also you just don't even believe it. When she reveals that Bella's her daughter, or Bella reveals it, and then she just sort of seems to take it in stride and just, okay, whatever. The teleport's behind you. There's never a moment where they kind of have a mother-daughter even a look, and you're never really buying it. It just clouds the whole thing.
And you know what else? Just to cloud it a little bit more. I want one trope in Doctor Who to die so badly, and that trope is, announcements, patronizing announcements coming over the tannoy in a future location. Just like, you please leave this area. With this slight menace in the voice. Like, what? Is this just all over the future? Is this a thing? Like, who's doing these announcements? Who? They got some sort of patronizing AI voice company working? Whose is the voice?
I kind of don't mind it, because I'm feeling like that's becoming more common. Like, I live in New York City or close to it, and I take the subway pretty regularly. And for a long time, you would hear the conductor when they would come on the subway, and it would be a real person and be like, the voice, like, get out of the doors or whatever, right? And a few years back, they started having pre-recorded voices, which I think they still do some of today. I think they pulled back on it because it probably got bad feedback, but that it just feels like that's where we're going. You know what I mean? Automated voices and automating jobs. I mean, we were just talking about AI. I think this is one of the things that will increasingly get more canned. And I do think it is a bit of a shorthand for the future. And you can have fun with it too. I'm sort of suddenly remembering Bad Wolf, where some canned announcer tells Chris Eccleston's doctor that he's live on TV, so please do not swear. That was a funny bit. So you can have fun with it. I don't mind it too much.
It doesn't feel like they're having fun with it here. Yeah, it's a little too common. And but you know what? In my head canon, I like to think that the person behind that voice is one Clara Oswald.
Oh, and that is, of course, the third question you're answering. Where is the Clara Splinter?
Yeah, so that's my thing. I'm putting her in the announcement booth.
So Clara Oswald, as we all know, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor, all across the Doctor's time stream, and she is probably in every episode we've ever seen, just not visible. So even though this is in the future of The Name of the Doctor, in the Doctor's personal time, his time stream, his/her time stream goes backwards and forwards. I don't think there's any reason Clara couldn't have been splintered forward as well.
For our purposes, it's very useful to have her to clean up any plot holes.
See, I feel like maybe this is being mean to the Clara Splinter here, but hey, we've done it before, so I'm going to go for it. Maybe she's a Dreg. In fact, maybe she's the Dreg leader, and the act of giving the Doctor some oxygen and politely getting in the cage, which again, I felt a little out of nowhere. Maybe it's all because it's Clara. Maybe she unfortunately evolved into a Dreg.
Yeah. I can believe that. Yeah. And the Doctor doesn't even acknowledge her. Oh, Doctor. Don't even recognize Clara. Yeah, this is the problem, that the Doctor doesn't recognize Clara anymore, even in Dreg form.
All right. Well, let's see how this conversation has influenced our rating, which, of course, leads us to the last question, the final question, the only question that matters for Orphan 55. What did we think of this episode? The Pull to Open rating system, of course, has 5 ratings. Oh, my. Lots to explain this week. We have, of course, the Dalek, which is the rating we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, which is what we give to a not-so-good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which we give to a not-so-good episode of Doctor Who. But hey, at least they tried something. At least we learned something.
Yep.
And
they tried something different.
Also have the Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. And
yes,
starting
as of last week,
we have the new latest 5th rating. It is the Fixed Point in Time, which we give to episodes that are beyond judgment.
That we cannot race. We are like River Song on the shores of Lake Silencio. We cannot shoot the Doctor. We cannot criticize. We cannot. And just like me with Destiny of the Daleks, we just can't. For reasons of nostalgia, whatever you call it. But I'd like to think that the Fixed Point in Time is going to be a very, very spare rating. Peter's already mentioned that there are Doctor Who stories that he would feel that way about. I'm sure that you, the listener, would have your own list of potential fixed points in time that you just couldn't rate if they're bad, and you couldn't pretend they're good, but you just want to let them be. Make it a fixed point in time. But very sparingly, this is like, we didn't also mention, by the way, the Doctor using her psychic powers on the Dreg.
Oh, that's
to see the whole history of humanity. Very sparingly used power. In
my
the Doctor's
kids noted
arsenal.
that, and it was really great to see them figure out the continuity on their own, because they basically saw that. I think Grace brought it up, but I didn't answer with the other examples. I think it was Jack who immediately said, "Oh, do you remember in The Girl in the Fireplace?"
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, so it was so good to see them as fans now, kind of like, oh, right, and they're kind of like putting it together on their own. I love that.
Referring to canon, you must be so proud.
So proud. Yes.
Absolutely. What else does a Doctor Who fan want from their children but referring to other episodes in canon? Love it.
It's like, we don't referring to Doctor Who. That's 1 and 2 right there.
Well, maybe I don't think we're going to need the
graduation further down.
Indeed. Maybe they in the future will use this as a fixed point in time. But no, I think this is clearly a bad episode, and I'm going to give it an Ogron. I don't think it's a Professor Hater. Absolutely irredeemable, because they're not trying anything new. Doctor Who has had environmental messages in it before, as we've seen many times in the Pertwee era, even before Planet of Giants, in the Hartnell era. Like, that's how far back the environmental messaging goes. So, not trying anything new. In fact, trying something very old, with the sort of the every part of the tropes here, all of the alien stuff, all of the running around corridors. Like, it is lazy Doctor Who writing at its laziest, so it is not worth the shiny twinkly Professor Hater, who at least teaches us something.
Wow.
It's Orphan 55 is an Ogron. I'm sorry.
Crazy. I was tempted to do the Ogron. I had a hard time reading this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I know my commentary was very critical, but I did want to go out of my way with the things that I thought worked. And I even though you're right on that, it's 3 kind of different kinds of scripts in one, and it should have picked one. I think chunks of the stuff, particularly as an action thriller, work really well. This is a fast-paced episode that gets your blood pumping. It's very visceral. So I give it a decent amount of points for that. And I almost went with a Dalek. And this is more a little bit the influence of my kids, because they both kind of liked it, and Jack was leaning that way. But the ending in particular just ruins it so badly. And it's just such a misread on both just storytelling and Doctor Who itself. It just crashes and burns. Like, there's no way I could give this one a purely positive rating, but I am going to give it a Professor Hater, because I do think there is a good story that could have been told here, and I don't think it would have needed too many adjustments. I think it's instructive to look at Orphan 55. I don't regret watching it again, because I had more fun this time around, particularly getting into the action. But it is instructive on sort of how not to do Doctor Who, probably more than any episode that certainly comes to mind, maybe more than any we've ever done. Like, it's like, no, this you got it wrong. But I respect the parts of the story that do work. So I'm giving it a Professor Hater. It isn't the worst episode, but overall it holds your attention. At least I wasn't bored, I guess, which is not a generous review. But I'm giving it the Hater.
I am glad you weren't bored, and I unfortunately was. That's the reason for my Ogron. But let us climb back into our TARDIS. Now we have closed the book on Orphan 55, and see if we can go somewhere in Doctor Who history that will not bore us. Or anger us. So it is time. It is time to fire up the randomizer. And Pete has one part. He's looking at the Codex right now. I hope the entire list of stories that we haven't done, with all the fixed points in time removed. We used to use that to denote the stories that we've been to before. We just bounce off and do it again. But no, now we have a definitive number for the other part of the randomizer, which is random.org, which I have control of, which is using atmospheric noise and levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to generate an actual random number.
Hey, I just got that connection. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
There we go.
Boom.
It's bouncing off and taking us to carbon dioxide related episodes. But yes, it is not the pseudo-randomness of algorithms. It is actual, true atmospheric randomness. So, Pete, what is the number? How many stories do we have left? What is the number I'm entering into random.org?
Well, we have 226 stories now that I have officially ticked off Orphan 55 from the list.
All right. So the number will be between 1 and 226. And what I have to be very careful here because I think randomizer, if we're going to plan, a randomizer might be listening to what I'm asking of it this week. So Pete, you go first. I'm going to think hard about my request. What's your request for the randomizer?
Well, because Earth was so ill-served here, I think we need a break from our home planet. Yep. I'd love to go to an episode that just has nothing to do with Earth. Like, take us somewhere else. Like, I want a vacation from Earth.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. I think also a vacation from Earth quarries. Please, randomizer. No more quarries. No quarries in this. Now that
would be
may
strict.
Be harder. That would be pretty strict. But I'm also going to say, randomizer, please listen to Pete because I like that idea. I like this idea that we should just go focus on something that has nothing to do with Earth at all. You know, Earth is not the most important place in the universe, as Douglas Adams told us. It is merely, disregarded planet on the outer spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. There are many more worlds out there. Let's go to one of them. So, Pete, give me a countdown. We'll find out where we're going.
Let's do it. In 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fantastic.
193. We are still in New Who.
We are. Oh, no. It did not listen to us. Well, it sort of did. I mean, it has to do with Earth, unfortunately. It is Kill the Moon.
Oh, no. No. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. No. No, no, no. No, that's all I can say.
It's on the moon. I guess it's not Earth.
But Earth votes. Oh God! Oh! Kill the moon!
Earth votes.
Wow! This may be up there as along with Orphan 55 as one of my least liked New Who stories. So I'm going to be hate watching so hard.
You're going to get a second chance to judge the show. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, there is voting, but the voting on Pull to Open is going to have to wait a week, everybody. Guys, thank you for listening. This is Pull to Open, the podcast. It's a podcast. You can listen to us on all kinds of podcast apps, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or all those other fine apps that we are available on. Check your favorite podcast app. Ask a friend to check their podcast app as well and tell them, hey, there's this great Doctor Who podcast called Pull to Open. Check it out. You can also follow them on social. Pull to Open is on TikTok. Is that TikTok? Yes. Pull to Open on TikTok.
Yes.
Pull to Open 63
on TikTok.
On Twitter and Instagram. Pull to Open. No, wait. YouTube.com/Pull to Open on YouTube. We're in all those places. You can leave comments there. You can say hi. You can tell us what you thought of the episode. You can tell us how we don't know anything about entertainment or Doctor Who, science fiction, or what have you. And we would be glad to engage with you on any of those platforms. We will see you next week, where we will take a gun to the moon and we will kill it. If you do not
save the moon,
refer a friend, review the podcast, listen and rate the show. Okay, we will kill that satellite.
No,
be warned.
Let's not and say we did. All right, we'll see you next week for some hate watching of Kill the Moon. Bye, folks.
See you. Bye.